Okay, shalom everybody. This isn't really a teaching or anything. It's more of a just a video on speculation. Um, just going to mention a lot of topics that I was just browsing. I'm working on something pretty big, uh, so this is just a way for me to remind myself about it. So it has to do with the year 1905, 1906. 120 years from that is the year 2026. But 120 years before 2026 is 1906, 1905. And what happened on that year? 1905 was the French law on the separation of the churches and state. That's where it established state secularism in France. So essentially, the Roman Catholic Church they were the state religion of France, and then from 1905 that was ended. They had separated as being supported by the state. That was a big event, but it wasn't a global event, but it was definitely a big historical a inflection point in French history. Now, another event that happened in 1905, 1906 was in China. You had the last emperor was born. That is Puyi. He was born in 1906, and what happened? Well, he was the last emperor, right? And that dynasty, that was the last imperial dynasty of China, which ended in 1911 due to the Wu Chang uprising. It took place in Wu Chang, where they took out it was an armed rebellion. So they took out the Qing dynasty, and that the place where this uprising took place was in Wu Chang, which is now known as Wuhan. It's now known as Wuhan. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but China has never been the same since the Republic of China had taken over. You know, you have Mao. Mao, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Mao. Mao took over, and I went through the complete history of China from the Qing dynasty all the way to prehistoric times. I looked at the religion of China from the Qing dynasty all the way to the very beginning. And they have been notorious for persecuting Christians, notorious for persecuting Muslims. They have censored both Christianity and Islam. There were times where they're a little more lax, but overall, the overall picture is they were very much in favor of Confucianism and Taoism, and but mostly antagonistic towards Christianity. Sometimes they were favorable towards Islam. They weren't unanimously against Islam. So I found that very interesting. And then when I looked at during the Han, I believe it's the Han Dynasty, a religion in the Han Dynasty, this is something that really stood out to me. It says here, families throughout Han China made ritual sacrifices of animals and food to deities, spirits, and ancestors at temples and shrines. They believed that when they do this, these items could be used in their spiritual realm. They believed each person had a two-part soul, a spirit soul, and a body soul. So a spirit soul that can go into the afterlife, and a body soul which remained in its grave or tomb on earth. So that's kind of similar to actually the Bible, where it teaches that the body, when you die, you're in a state of sleep and you don't go anywhere. You're in your grave. So that is interesting. I'm not saying I'm converting to Confucianism or anything like that. I'm just trying to draw parallels to the Bible. Because for the most part, the Chinese religions have had, they were so distant from Christianity or any kind of biblical, I couldn't find any association. But until I read this entry on Wikipedia about the Han Dynasty and religion, it's showing some hints of some kind of morality. It says here the emperor, the ruler, acted as the high priest, the highest priest in the land, who made sacrifices to heaven. The main deities known as the five powers and the spirits of. So you can see the high priest, that's similar to Israel, isn't it? They believed in three realms: heaven, earth, and mankind were linked by natural cycles of yin and yang. So, no, this is important. I want to stress this point. If the emperor did not behave according to proper ritual, ethics, and morals, he could disrupt the fine balance of these cosmological cycles and cause calamities such as earthquakes, floods, droughts, epidemics, and swarms of locusts. That is that is remarkable. That is very much like the Bible, where you don't obey, you get the curses. So I wonder where they got that from. I wonder where that originated from. And I'm asking, not sarcastically, I'm actually asking genuinely. They believe Lao Tzu was a holy prophet who could offer salvation and good health if his devout followers would confess their sins. Whoa, I didn't even notice that until now. Okay, that's in the 2nd century after Yahushua. They banned the worship of unclean gods who accepted meat sacrifices. Okay, Buddhism entered the Han Dynasty. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that part. I'm going to close this tab and read about sovereigns and the 5 emperors. So they say that the 3 sovereigns existed before the 5 emperors. So it's interesting that there are 3 figures known as the 3 august ones. They were said to be god kings, demigods, or god emperors who used their abilities to improve the lives of people and gave and imparted to them essential skills and knowledge. So these kings were said to introduce people to knowledge how to build houses and farming, invention of silk culture, the invention of the calendar and Chinese script, so writing, calligraphy, and also credited to the king. So I don't know if there's any link, but again, this video is wild speculation. It's not supposed to be based on fact, but just trying to use my mind and wisdom or whatever, just any kinds of ties. So three sovereigns. This dates back to the 2070 BC to 2852 BC. So this is a long time ago. This is if I look at the Jubilee cycle calendar, I have it in front of me, 2852. If we just look and see that year BC, where does that bring us to? Just trying to tie it in with what the Bible says, because I know people speculate that China has a link to the Bible. And you know what? I really don't know. So I can't comment that there is. I can only speculate. So minus 2070 in the Jubilee cycle calendar by Joseph Dumond, it would bring us to the time of Aber, the father of the Hebrews. And then if you go to 2852, this goes to 2852 is roughly the time of 986. So that is, I'm trying to see the parallel here. Seth. What is this? Minus 2856. there were lunar eclipses. So this is the time of Enoch. No, it's not Enoch. 2852. Okay, so it's right after Enoch dies. And at the time of Enoch, according to the book of Jasher, all the earth came to Enoch to learn wisdom of Elohim. So that's interesting. That precedes this story of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. And so Enoch imparted his wisdom about Elohim. And the only story I can tie to 3 sovereigns, to 3 kings or 3 men, are the 3 sons of Noah. Japheth or Japheth, Shem, and Ham, or Ham. So those are the 3 that I could think of, that all the human races, all the different nations came out of those 3 sons and their wives. So I don't know if there's a tie with that. And then going to close with Confucianism. Okay, Confucianism. What did I see here that is interesting about this was the worldly concern of Confucianism rests upon the belief that human beings are fundamentally good. So that is an interesting teaching. There aren't many religions that teach that, but I find that interesting, that human beings are fundamentally good. So we're not evil, and we're not good and evil, but just good. And they're saying that human beings are teachable, improvable, and perfectible through personal and communal endeavor, especially self-cultivation and self-creation. So that's showing, it's not completely evil, I would say. It's saying that people are able to be perfected, and there's nothing wrong with that. Confucian thought could focus on the cultivation of virtue in a morally organized world. Okay, so they're focusing on virtue. That's interesting. Some of the basic Confucian ethical concepts and practices include Ren, Yi, and Li, and Ji. So Ren means benevolence or humaneness. Ren is the essence of the human being, which manifests as compassion. It is the virtue form of heaven. What I link to this in the Bible is what Yehoshua said. He said, the weighty matters of the law, mercy, justice, and faith. Ren sounds like mercy to me, where someone is being compassionate. So you could tie Ren in with mercy. That's a weighty matter of the law. Yi is the upholding of righteousness and the moral disposition to do good. Now, I'm not sure if this is faith or justice. I'm going to say it's faith, just for the time being. So faith isn't simply knowing. It is, faith is living it out. It is obedience. It's obedience through knowledge, or knowledge. Yeah, it's knowing, but also living it. It's faithfulness, a covenant faithfulness. So upholding righteousness and the moral disposition to do good. So faithfulness, yeah, you're upholding. I'm going to link it to faithfulness because it doesn't make sense if you link it to the third one, which is Li. Li is a system of ritual norms and propriety that determines how a person should properly act in everyday life in harmony with the law of heaven. So Li reminds me of the Torah, essentially. It is a list of do's and don'ts, how you should act. So this is the determination. So Li reminds me of Torah. Ji, Z-H-I, I don't know how to pronounce that. Ji is the ability to see what is right and fair, or the converse, or the opposite in the behaviors exhibited by others. No, that's not the opposite. Converse is conversely. So Ji reminds me of mercy. So justice or judgment, or maybe even wisdom. You could probably say wisdom. And Li could even be judgment as well, or justice. So Ren could be mercy, could be seen as mercy. compassion. Yi could be faith, faith or faithfulness. Li could be justice, and Ji could be wisdom, the ability to see what is right and fair in your own behavior and the behaviors by others. And then Confucianism holds one in contempt, either passively or actively, so whether you're intentionally doing it or unintentionally, for failure to uphold the cardinal, so very important, moral values of Ren and Yi. So there are, when you don't obey, there are consequences, and you're going to be held in contempt. So I don't know how they carry out that contempt, but I find that very interesting, because when I looked at the full history of China on Wikipedia. I looked at all their empires, I looked at all the religions, and there was really nothing that I could tie to the Bible at all, until I looked at the Han Dynasty regarding the sacrificial system, the high priest, or the emperor acting as a high priest, which is kind of like harkens back to what King Saul did, where King Saul was not allowed to sacrifice, but because he was impatient and couldn't wait for Samuel, he decided to do it himself. So that was wrong. I'm not advocating any of what I read, but I'm just trying to find my mind. I think Jehovah gives us a mind to associate even the most obscure things. But I don't feel this is very obscure. I think there are traces and elements of some kind of moral code. I mean, obviously there's a moral code of conduct, but I don't know if there's a link to the Torah at all. There are some, maybe it's just coincidental, I don't know. But I mean, clearly Ren is mercy. That is obvious. Yi, again, is upholding righteousness. So could be justice, could be faith, could be both. Li is definitely like a Torah. So it's the list, and then Ji is the ability to see what is right and fair. So it sounds like wisdom and discernment. And then they hold one in contempt for, like, basically sinning. When you break the laws of Ren and Yi, or the moral values, that is like a sin, essentially. So the reason I talk about this isn't I'm not trying to magnify ancient Chinese culture or Confucianism. It's basically to remind me of the link between 1905, 1906, and 2026, which is a 120-year period. And if you look at the Jubilee cycle in the calendar there, the Jubilee cycle, sabbatical Jubilee cycle calendar, 120 years from 2026, 2026 falls in the fifth sabbatical cycle and the third year. So I'm just going to remind myself again, it takes place in the fifth cycle, sabbatical cycle, in the third year. And this is the 120th Jubilee cycle. And what is forecasted or predicted to take place in 2026 is basically the start of, let me just get this right. I believe it's the 2300 days of hell, if I'm not mistaken. Culminating in the imprisonment. No, that's not it. I think it's the two witnesses take the scene. Yeah, that's when the two witnesses begin their ministry. How come it doesn't say that here in the chart? Three and a half years. Okay, I can't really find it in this chart at the moment, so you just have to take my word for it. But if you rewind, I've been doing some studies on this chart and the timeline, and I'm going to present that tomorrow in more detail as to in more detail as to the history of mankind from Adam to Abraham and look at what the timeline actually is, based on the sources that I mentioned in the description of the live stream to be done tomorrow. So I'm gonna present it tomorrow, but I'll just give you a little preview that the Jubilee cycle in which the flood took place is the 33rd. It's actually the 33rd. I know Joseph has it here as a different one, but based on the timeline that I calculated from Adam to Abraham, the math adds up in all four sources that I've used: the Septuagint, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Jasher, and even this chart that Joseph had done. This chart is very, very helpful. I can't describe just how helpful this is. It's immensely helpful to trace our history as a species, as mankind. So if you look at the 33rd Jubilee cycle, if you look there, the flood would fall on the year. Where is that? Oh no, Joseph says it's the 33rd. Yeah, actually, he does say that. But according to the other sources I looked at, namely the three scriptures, I will show that it's actually in the 27th Jubilee. Funnily enough, it's in the 27th Jubilee cycle. So that is a from the 120th to the 27th. Specifically, what year is that? Noah entered the ark in the 6th year in the second month, on the 17th of the second month. So that's the year 1354. Yeah, 1354, which is the 27th. Yeah, 27th sabbatical cycle. Or is that the 28th? Oh, it's the 28th. 13. Well, that can't be. Maybe I did the math wrong here. Noah built the ark on the 27th Jubilee. He entered the ark in the 6th year. Okay, let me just make sure I'm reading this chart correctly. I didn't want to make a long video. I just wanted to. Okay, so this is the first. Everything under is the first. Okay, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. All right. So this is the 27th. And it says he entered on the 6th. No, the 5th. And the year is, if I'm looking at this correctly, the 6th year in the second month. The 27th Jubilee cycle. So if you take 27 and you multiply that by 49, the Jubilee cycle is 49 years, we'll get 1323. One, three, two, three. Okay, I don't know. I have to review this. Maybe I got it wrong, but it says here I have to just double check. I have to double check all these facts. But see, I haven't really tried to prove this wrong, this timeline at all, and it wasn't my goal to do that. It was just I was just trying to look at the years that each patriarch gave birth to their son, and that way you can build a timeline of the human history or the patriarch's history or biblical history. So I don't think this affects the uh, the 120th Jubilee cycle. It only I mean we'll see if that's affect. I don't think it will be. I think this is more talking about the years is more about the past. So Noah built the ark in the 27th Jubilee. He entered the ark in the sixth year. Okay. Anyway, like I said, this is just to remind myself to look at this. That's why I'm speculating about China and all these things. But okay, I'm kind of not looking at my notes correctly right here. Thing is, I need to get this Jubilee cycle correct and understand it, interpret it correctly. Because it says that Noah finished building the ark when he was 600 years old, right? So that would bring you to the year 1354. The year 1354 actually uh, it fits in this cycle, but it's right. It's in between the 27th to 28th. So I'm trying to interpret this calendar. So actually, you know what? It would fall in the 27th Jubilee cycle, and it would fit on the fifth. It would be in the fifth sabbatical cycle in the third year. That's when the flood started. And if you look at the parallel to where we are now, so 27 minus 120 is 93. So 93 years later, or Jubilee cycles later, that brings us to 2026. So the fifth Jubilee cycle and the third year of that cycle is when, according to Septuagint, the Book of Jasher, according to Jubilees, all three of those books say that that's when the flood took place, on the fifth Jubilee cycle, on the third year. And according to Joseph Dumont's sabbatical calendar, sabbatical Jubilee calendar, on the fifth cycle of the third year coming up is when the 2300 days of hell begin. Like that's when things really cataclysmic, something really big is going to happen in 2026. Now, I don't know if it's fire from heaven because, I mean, water was the thing in the flood, obviously. It was destroyed the earth, destroyed all life. So I don't know if that's actually going to be the world burning up in fire in 2026. I really can't say. But if that's so, that is really because who isn't it the two witnesses? They can call down fire from heaven. Um, but it doesn't say that they're going to burn up the whole planet. Now I know in some prophetic books it says that the world will be on fire. Um, I'm just not sure how that fits in with all the prophetic Gomorrah, but on a global scale. whereas fire and sulfur and just all the fumes are very toxic. No life can no creature could survive that. Essentially, it's very toxic conditions, unlivable situation. Um, so I find that very. I don't think it's a coincidence that, according to Joseph's reckoning, on the the fifth sabbatical cycle, in the third year of that cycle, is when, because we're in the fourth sabbatical cycle in the fourth year. We're only uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 6 years away from this 2026, and the initial shock of it being horrible circumstances is starting to not fade, but I'm trying. I'm no longer in the fear mongering, the fear mongering stage. Like that it's, oh, we're all gonna die and this is bad. Like it's more like, Jehovah's plan is going forward, and I'm not complacent and not stoic about it, but he's using this for people to actually become better. Someone mentioned in the Zoom meeting like tough love, and there's so many lessons and so many ways that we are growing from this. So we need to, like Paul said, I know how to be content when I have little and when I have a lot. So I think it's a similar situation we find ourselves in. We need to find contentment in Jehovah, not in the external circumstances. Just because you'd be allowed to go to the movies or go to the mall, like really, what joy was there in that anyway? We're finding out now what the actual priorities in life are. It's God, our relationship with our Creator, our relationship with each other. Those are top two. Three is food, shelter, clothing, fellowship. Those. I mean, that's relationships, fellowship. But God is bringing us back. Elohim is bringing us back to what actually matters. If there's anything we should learn from this and what's coming next, it's what are the actual priorities in this life, in this existence, in this earthly life, and the priorities in the next life. And I find interesting that even the Chinese culture, ancient Chinese culture, I should say, before communism, they held morality to a high standard, not like it is now. There seems to be no morality, no kindness, no mercy, no wisdom. No, it's so anti-Torah now. Whereas maybe back then they could be more receptive to a Torah-like system that is based on mercy, based on righteousness, based on treating people with respect and dignity, based on codes of conduct, based on a ruler actually. There was something I forgot to mention, but ancient Chinese culture, their rulers, they were expected to treat the people that they had authority over with respect, with dignity, and treat them well. And if they didn't, they would be removed from power, because they found from their experience that whenever a ruler ruled righteously, with kindness and compassion, they would do well. They would prosper as a nation. But then whenever a ruler would do unrighteously, would do wickedly, mistreat their citizens, and abuse them, and just would abuse his power, they would notice that they would receive a lot of curses. They would not do well. So that is, I don't know, that is very biblical. I mean, I don't have to say, I don't have to quote scripture. I can just tell you that common sense and logic, that is scriptural. That there are consequences for your actions. You reap what you sow. Okay, so I'm going to present this tomorrow morning, and I just got to eat something and then get to bed early, and then I'll present this and really do my due diligence, because there is so much information from the scriptures, from the historical aspect of the scriptures, where it gives you a timeline, a firm timeline that once you understand it, all these things become clear. And even the events that Joseph talks about, not everything lines up 100%, but the big ones do. And so tomorrow I'm going to present the timeline from Adam to Abraham. So I'm going to look at how old they were when they begot their sons. Again, look at the flood and maybe other, I don't know what other major events took place. But this is more like a primer of what is going to be presented tomorrow. And I just had all these tabs on China, so I can now close them. I think they're closed now. Yeah. So I'm closing that and the one about the last emperor too. So I don't need all these tabs open. That's pretty much the motivation of why I doing this video, to close my tabs and to remind myself of these things. So when it comes to the timeline of Adam to Abraham, looking with Adam. Okay, so the biggest events I can see that are of note. I mean, it's simple to, it's rather simple to calculate when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. It says here, Satan deceived Eve on the 7th year in the 2nd month. So it was the first sabbatical year. According to the book of Jubilees, Satan deceived Eve on the 7th year. That's the first sabbatical year. In the 2nd month, on the 17th day. I think I saw that somewhere else. The 2nd month and 17th day. What happened on that day? That was when the ark closed. Noah entered the ark. And then the 2nd month, on the 1st day, Jehovah locked the ark. He locked them in. Or secured them, I should say. On the 17th at evening, hold on. He entered the ark on the new moon of the 2nd month. Jehovah locked the ark on the 17th. So, historically, the 2nd month and the 17th day of the month, according to the book of Jubilees, that's the day that Adam and Eve were kicked out, expelled from the garden. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not true. It says that the 4th month, on the 1st day, so the new moon of the 4th month, that's when they were kicked out of the garden. But they were deceived. Adam and Eve, or I should say Eve was deceived on, that rhymes, it was deceived on the 7th year, 2nd month, on the 17th day. That's when Satan deceived Eve. And that's also the day where Jehovah locked in Noah and the animals and his family in the ark. So that's historically what happened. That's easy because it's the 7th year. So there's no discrepancy there. That's the only source that I know of, the book of Jubilees, that talks about when that took place, as to what year that took place. What's another one? So I'm actually taking the time to read. I finished Enoch. I'm currently reading Jubilees, and going to go through Jasher after that. But I noticed that not too many people actually read them in their entirety. And when you actually do that, you can, especially if you have the Spirit, and you keep the Sabbath, you keep the holy days, you keep the new moons, keep the sabbatical years. I mean, I'm just starting to do that. And the Jubilees. When you keep all those things, it gives you a broader understanding and a better understanding as to how to understand these books. Because if I'm just a Catholic or someone not obeying Torah, and I'm devoid of it, I'm ignorant of it, and then I read those same books, Enoch, Jubilees, and Jasher, I will twist them to whatever I want. But because Jehovah's made me aware of this, I can fit this in with what Joseph has showed us in his the Jubilee cycles and the calendar year. And I find it doesn't contradict. For the most part, it does not. So I'm going to show that tomorrow. And that's why I think this is so important. Because what Joseph has been preaching and teaching has been right, like shockingly and frighteningly right. Not that I ever doubted him, but when you prove it for yourself, it just makes it that much more strong of an argument. Right, so there weren't too many events, to be honest, from Adam to Abraham. Does Adam dies? Okay, I mean, that is a big event, but it's not like the flood kind of big event. Okay, where am I now? This is the 20th Jubilee cycle. You know what? I'm going to write down some events. I'm going to say the Tower of Babel, another big event where languages were confused and people were dispersed. It's a huge event. I got to look that one up for tomorrow. So I'm just using this as a primer for tomorrow. This isn't really a teaching, it's more just speculation and just getting my mind ready for tomorrow morning. Noah born, okay. There were lunar eclipses, okay. I can't really talk about that one. '20, 25th Jubilee cycle. Okay, well, we got to get to Abraham and then I'll stop. And Abraham was born. Where's Abraham here? Abraham was born in 1,948 years after the creation of Adam. That's according to Joseph Dumont. When I did the math, it lines up. It lines up. The Book of Jubilees and what's that? Book of Jasher and the Septuagint, they all line up with that year. They agree, all three of them. That is the 39th Jubilee, and that is correct. It says that in the Book of Jubilees. According to the Book of Jubilees, Abraham was born on the 39th Jubilee in the second week in the first year. So if we look at this, hold on, let me see. What is that again? 39th Jubilee? Okay. So I'm going to close this video soon. I'm just going to see if there's any big events I need to mention besides the flood, besides the Tower of Babel. And if anyone has any other ideas, just suggest it. So the 39th Jubilee, according to the book of Jubilees, Abraham was born on the 39th Jubilee, the second week in the third year. One, two, three. And Joseph has it as 1948. This has it as 1949. Okay, no, there's a little discrepancy, but it's not a big one. The important thing is it is in the 39th Jubilee. It is in the 39th. It agrees with Joseph there. There's just a little discrepancy as to how do you count the second cycle? Is it 2 cycles away or is it 2 cycles from it? Because if we're looking at 2 cycles, the second week, like 2 weeks from the Jubilee itself, you'd find yourself in the sixth cycle. So it depends how you count. And then if you add, uh, where is that again? The first year of the cycle would be 1947, whereas Joseph is in 1948. But we know that the year starts in the spring. So either way, it's between 1947 to 1948. So I mean, I'm not gonna. That's not a big deal. It's pretty much that's just because the year is calculated from spring and ends in the next spring. A difference of a year is really a difference. It's pretty much the same. But I think there's a bit of a when the Book of Jubilees describes a when it gives you a time frame, you'll notice that when it gives you the Jubilee number, that's okay. But when it talks about, uh, for example, it says the 25th Jubilee and the second week and the second day. Like week actually means cycle, and sometimes it says month. So it's a matter of being able uh, to understand what are they talking about after it says Jubilee, because if you don't understand, if you can't interpret what uh, what they mean by week, by what they mean by day, what they mean by month, you will be lost. And if you don't have this calendar, you'll also be super lost. But because I have this here, I can just point out, okay, 37th Jubilee, and then 2 days, and then the first year of that second week, which is this week, it means cycle, and it says it lines up exactly with what it says here. I mean, if this calendar was done according to a 50-year Jubilee cycle, everything is thrown off. None of these books, not the Septuagint, not the Book of Jubilees, not the Book of Jasher, would line up at all. They would all be false. This is the key. This calendar is the key. Really is the key to understand human history, biblical human history. Without it, without actually having a visual and a chart to match up with what the scriptures say, you won't be able to mark to find the markers in time. This is like mapping the genome. That's the best way I can compare this. Is this calendar is like a genome, and you mapped out the sequence of human history. So you just have to pinpoint, okay, Noah. So, for example, hair color. So this is the hair color gene, and this is, do you know what I mean? Like it's so specific, so accurate. The calendar of Jehovah, because he did institute time based on a 7-week, uh, 7-day week, and a depending on the moon, it could be 29, 30 days, month. And depending on the Aviv barley, could be 12 months, could be 13 months in a year. And then the sabbatical uh, cycles, which are 7 years per sabbatical cycle, that is not really up to, it doesn't, that's not up to anyone's interpretation. That is fixed calendar in terms of, that's what I noticed. Okay, when it comes to the sabbatical week, that is fixed. It's 7 days in a week. There's no argument. Sabbatical cycle, 7 years, no argument. That is set in stone pretty much. The Jubilee cycle, every 49. And then the 50th is the Jubilee, but it's also the first year of the next count. That is set in stone. But when we look at the month, that is something you cannot predict. No man can know the day or the hour of that new moon. When it comes to the new year, no one, again, you can't predict that either. The new moon and the new year cannot be predicted. It is not fixed in the same way the sabbatical week, uh, sabbatical years, and the Jubilee years are either. So I find that very remarkable. Jehovah's calendars, it is a marvel. I really, I understand what David wrote about now. He said, "How love I thy Torah." It is my meditation all the day in my thoughts. It is really like there's so much in here. I was straining to find a topic for the next video, and I just was resorting to reading apocryphal books and pseudepigraphical books, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just thinking, it may be profitable to read those things, to read those books, but at the same token, there was so much in front of me and in front of us that Joseph had been inspired to research and to produce this calendar that really is Jehovah's calendar, but he pretty much manifested it into a visible format that is easily interpreted. It's not like the Metonic cycle. It's not like the Hillel 2 calendar, which you need to be like an astrophysicist to understand. This is just counting sevens and 50s and 49s and 120. This isn't rocket science, but it's here and just in time before all these things happen. The timing is no coincidence. And then Jehovah opened my mind during our Zoom meeting to start investigating these years of the births of the son of Adam, the son of Seth, the son of da da da, and so on and so forth. So part one will be Adam to Abraham. That's what I'm going to cover. Looking at the flood, looking at the Tower of Babel. That's part one. Part two will be I haven't completed yet, but I have to do my research on that and see if it lines up. Not if it lines up, but see what the Bible actually says in terms of the years, and to see if it fits with this calendar, and to see how it matches with what Joseph has already has determined here. So we're going to look at Abraham to Judah, the son of Jacob, the tribe of Judah, basically the father of the Jews, and look at the commandment given to Moses to free the Israelites. I think we'll also look at Joseph. Let's see, Joseph sold to slavery. That's probably a big event too. So actually, I'm going to go through that right now and just see what I can look at, and then I can just I won't have to think about it anymore. So it's probably a good thing. Let's see. I have here Abraham is born. Abraham was born 1948 after Adam. So I've had this chart for a long time, but I never really looked at the rest of it. Only the one that's coming up. I don't really look at the past one too much. So I thought, oh yeah, it's the past. What do I have to gain from that? But you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. Like one of the proverbs say, like a earthly proverb. 1948. So if I go from the 40th Jubilee cycle, just look at the events, maybe I can find some other events. Isaac born to Abraham. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. That's a big one. Yeah, I'm going to write that there. Sodom. Where am I? Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. That might even be in the Abraham timeline, but I might just put that in the Abraham one because there's going to be way too much in the video 2. So Joseph sold to slavery. Isaac offered as a sacrifice. That's huge too. Why didn't I? Good thing I'm looking. Isaac offered as a sacrifice. Go look at that in the timeline, see what year that was. So it was the 44th Jubilee cycle. The year Joseph dies, the year Jacob dies. 7 years of famine in Egypt. Oh, that's huge too. Wow, there's a lot. 7 years of plenty. 7 years of famine. That's a big one. Joseph was 17, he sold to slavery. Shem lived to 600. Okay. So I'm at the 48th Jubilee cycle. So I just do up to Judah. Joshua. Okay, so we're way past that now. Entering the promised land. Okay, the 12 spies sent into the to spy out the promised land. Where is that? That would be in Judah to King David. That's part 3. 12 spies sent out to spy the land promised, the land of Canaan. So that would be in part 3. So part 2 will be Abram to Judah, talking about the timeline there. Joseph sold to slavery, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, the commandment to Moses to free the Israelites, and the Exodus when that happened. Part 3 of the series will be from Judah to King David. So 12 spies were sent out to spy the land of Canaan. The anointing of King David, I put that there. I don't know what else is a big event that needs to be traced. King David anointed. Oh, I put that already. The building of the temple, I put that there. Solomon begins to build the temple. Okay. King David does the census. Yeah, that's actually that's a big event as well. King David does the census, chooses one of 3 curses. That's turned on the 63rd Jubilee cycle. The end of 70 years of captivity. Judah taken to captivity. Second Kings 19:21. That's a big one to prove this calendar. Where am I now? Split of okay. I'm gonna just put there. Second Kings 1929. See where year that would be. On the other sources that I'm using, and just to prove whether it's lining up. So what else did I put there? 70 years of captivity. Okay, I put that there. Okay, so we're at the 68th. Turn the page. We're going to go all the way to Yeshua. The 10 tribes could have returned home, but they did not repent. Alexander the Great conquers the world. Ezra reads the entire law at Sukkot. Sabbatical year. We're getting there to Yeshua. And there, Yeshua. Persecution of the saints. Because after Yeshua, it's pretty easy to track the years. It's once you get to you, everything before him is hard to map out a timeline that actually, when you do the math, it all adds up. So again, the first video will be done in the morning tomorrow. I don't know what time, but in the morning, before maybe by sunrise, somewhere around there. So Adam to Abraham, the flood, Isaac, offer sacrifice, da da da. Second video will be the timeline of the history of mankind from Abraham to Judah. The third video will be the history of mankind from Judah to King David. And then the fourth one will be the history of mankind from King David to Yeshua HaMashiach. So from King David to the son of David, which I find really cool. And then you're going to have the captivity into Babylon, when the second temple was built, and then the arrival of Mashiach on earth, and his death. But I mean, that's not really in Jubilees or Jasher or anything, but it's just that one's pretty easy to locate, I would think. So yeah, that's all. That's what I'm working on. It's pretty big, because this is really, like, human history not only shows us where we've been and where we are, but actually where we're going to. So I did find some discrepancies, but I think they're mostly, from what I can tell so far, from just doing part one. And I've done a lot of research just during that Zoom meeting. I was able to finish a whole timeline from Adam to Abraham, and looked into the facts. I double checked them. There's still some things that are kind of unclear, but I think I'll iron them out tomorrow, maybe even during the live stream. And I lost my train of thought, but this is really, it's very important. I don't know how else I can stress how important this is. Yeah, I'm trying to say that what I found in the Septuagint, in the Book of Jubilees, and the Book of Jasher, I'd say that for the most part, what I found is that it matches up with this calendar and what Joseph has been saying, which I kind of, anyway, I'm just going to say that. I'm going to focus on the positive and just say that that's what I found, that those books actually support what is in here. For the most part, I'd say the majority of it. I can't give a number as to what percentage agrees with it, but it's the majority does. There are some discrepancies, but I feel like once the series is done and once I've mapped it out and did the math and look at these things very closely and diligently and double check and everything like that, and verify from the three sources I'm looking at, actually four sources, that it's all going to line up in the end. It's just there are some discrepancies before at certain parts, but I feel like they're all going to match up, but we'll see. And time will tell. And just by nature of having to sleep, if I didn't have to sleep, I just do this 24 hours and not rest, but I have to rest my body. It's been a long day. I think I started streaming this morning, and it's pretty much been a continual stream of streaming, only taking breaks to eat. And so it's 10 p.m. now, and I feel like I've been streaming for over 12 hours, or at least into this kind of fact checking. Prove all things, right? Not just scriptural things, but even non-scriptural things. Prove all things. And I used to look at these charts and just think, yeah, Joseph did all the work. I don't have to prove any of this. This is just smooth sailing. I don't have to. I mean, why would I have to go from Adam and say, Adam was 130 years old. He gave birth to, or his wife, they gave birth to Seth at 130. So that's automatically, it's pretty. You just plug it in and then just plug in the numbers. That's all you do, and it adds up. But not so fast. It doesn't add up as easily as one might think. Because let's just look at the first one. Adam, Seth was born in 130, so it would be the technically would be the third sabbatical cycle. The third jubilee. Be the third jubilee, and it would fall on the fifth sabbatical cycle, on the fourth day or fourth year. I'm thinking in terms of jubilees now, so it's actually the fourth week, aka fifth week, aka fifth cycle, and also the fourth day, which is also known as the fourth year. So you have to be familiar with the terminology it's using. So that's when that took place, and it lines up. That first one does. But when you look at the subsequent births, they start to diverge. But again, I have a lot of faith that it will all just realign at the big junctures. Like, for example, the birth of Abraham, it all falls together in place, even though there are some discrepancies here and there. They just line up. I can't explain it, but I don't know who to tell about this. Maybe I mean, there's a video presentation, so I don't know how else to present it. I just find video is way more easier for me to do rather than write a scholarly paper on it. I mean, I could, but that just takes way too much time. It's easier to just jot down my thoughts like this in this fashion. And I'll just repeat, the numbers, the years, the sources, and the numbers that are given from those sources. And perhaps, yeah, I'll write them down. I mean, I do have this document open saying what the source is and how many years between how many years or how old they were, how old like Adam was when he had Seth, how old Seth was from Jasher, from Jubilees, from the Septuagint, and it just takes a bit of deciphering what those differences are and how you can reconcile those differences. Because when you are able to sort through some of the code, it's kind of like code in a way. Like in Septuagint, there's some kind of code that has to be deciphered, and then once you do that, all the numbers line up in all three of those books, and then you can use this key, as I call it, use this key to see where it is in the cycle. And because this didn't exist before, people had to just make their own and understand based on limited knowledge, because not many people were or are keeping sabbatical years or the Jubilee cycles in the correct way, because people are saying the Jubilees every 50 years, so 50 times 120 or 50 times whatever, but that's not the way to do it. Joseph was able to, Jehovah showed him how you're actually supposed to do it. It's every 49 years. And just by that fact, everything lines up perfectly with what's in the scriptures and what he has mapped out. So that's the end of this video. This is just speculation, that first part, and then more of a brainstorming session to get my thoughts jotted down. So now I know I'm going to talk about in the next 4 videos when it comes to this, but I will also still do some teachings in the Septuagint, but I I think I want to focus more on this just to get this hammered out, and then once this is done, I can just focus on other things. But I feel like this is important to prove. This is really really important to prove to myself. Number one, I want to prove it to myself, and to prove Jehovah, prove His word, whether His word stands the test of time, so to speak. And this is to do with time, with years, because that scripture in Genesis 6, where it says the age of man will be 120 Shana. That is, I can only say after the fact, because what we're going through right now lines up with that. And there's also the prophecy from Daniel about the 70 years, the 70 Jubilees. That is, I mean, if it wasn't for that prophecy of Daniel, 70 times 49 is 3430. If it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't have too much besides the 120 Jubilee cycles to go on. But because both of those exist and they seem to line up, the 120 cycles of time and the 70 weeks of Daniel, or 70 Shabua, 70 Pentecost, 49, 70, 49s. This is no coincidence at all. It really isn't. So yeah, this is very exciting. I get to tie in all these things together: the Septuagint, the pseudepigraphia, the sabbatical cycles, all in one thing, because they're all connected. They have to do with time. They have to do with. They have to do with the history of mankind. They have to do with where are we? Where were they? Where are we now? And where we're going to be in the future. And to see if the scripture can be if they're typos, because I feel like sometimes there are typos, but or is it just human error? Is it my own error of miscalculating? I don't know what else to say about this. It's just I'm very excited for tomorrow, but I have to eat and I have to sleep, so I'm gonna close this stream. I don't know what else to say, but I just wanted to talk about it, get the brain going, and get the gears turning. So